12-step programs, regardless of what program you're in, in 12-step, there is this sort of old school mentality where it's a bit of a secret society. You keep it anonymous. You don't necessarily talk about it or that you are part of it. You kind of lead by action, and people are attracted to everybody knows the 12-step. Everybody has heard of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, but you don't necessarily say that you're in it. And I just wholeheartedly disagree. I don't talk about Alcoholics Anonymous a lot, but Alcoholics Anonymous saved my fucking life. And every time I talk about my sobriety, I get a barrage of DMs specifically from people, and I immediately connect because that is what I know to be the solution. And so we're on this podcast. There's a lot of people listening. If you are struggling with addiction, I just want to put a flag in the ground right here, right now, that there's an absolute solution. You have no idea what could be your future. And if you want to learn more, DM me. Truth, facts, 100%.
That's generous. Earlier you said, it's weird. You kind of like pre-framed your statement. It's weird. And I don't think it's weird at all. I think that a lot of times we're taught that we have to do it alone. But if you look at even the Native American culture, it's like the lone wolf dies. The wolf that tries to do it on their own without being part of the tribe, they always die. But there's such a paradox in our psyche because there's one part of us that wants to be a man who handles his ship. But what do we do when the ship has a fucking hole in it and we're sinking and we're dying? That 90% of people that don't heal, there is some mysticism around that. There is this connection to, I don't want to say a bearded dude in the sky, but like there is a portion of healing. Maybe the whole bowl that holds the healing is actually a connection to your creator or your higher power.
I'll kind of break it down this way, right? When you are in active addiction, you have a sense of complete control, even though you're totally out of control. And where that sense of control comes from is the ability to change how you feel, right? Like you feel like crap. You know that there is a substance that will actually numb that crappy feeling. So you feel bad, you can easily make yourself feel good. You feel good, you can easily make yourself feel great by using a substance. And so in essence, you're kind of playing God.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're kind of controlling how you feel no matter what is going on around you.
Yeah.
And so when you decide to take the path of sobriety or recovery, that control is stripped and you feel completely vulnerable, raw, and like a raw nerve, right? Like you don't have that. So what's next? You turn it over to a power greater than yourself and have hope and faith that is going to work. And I'm just here to say, like, I don't have a secular belief, right? I don't overanalyze what God is. I don't try to intellectualize it. I just have a faith that every morning, and I do not miss this ever, never, I get on my knees and I pray. And I don't give a shit who I'm praying to, but I could tell you right now, the one thing I've done very, very consistently, if not the most consistently since I've made the decision to get sober, was talk to God every morning. And it could simply be, for the layman, me talking to myself and making help the way I start my day every day. But for me, and we can go down a long list of stories that have been proof enough to me to continue this path. God is real in my life. Period. Done. God is real in my life. And I believe. I don't believe in a thing. I believe in faith. Because 20 years and 6 months ago, I needed heroin to believe in anything. Today, no artificial flavors. Life. I live on the energy that life brings my way on a day-to-day basis. And I take action every single morning to put myself in a successful position to manage whatever is thrown my way. Doesn't always win. I fucking have days that, like, you know, I wish weren't part of my life. And sometimes those days string together and they can turn into weeks, sometimes even months. It's life, right? It's going to be hills and valleys. It's not always going to be tiptoeing in the tulips. But I can honestly just tell you that without God, higher power, universe, energy, whatever you want to call it, there's no shot that I'm sitting across the table from you today, period.
Yeah.
You know, and again, though, I just want to clarify, I do really believe, because you started this question with the connection to self, putting yourself in a vulnerable enough position to look inside. And that could be the juju that keeps people on the path. And I think that's true. However, getting to that place, in my opinion, does require connecting to a person or a community that you can find support in.
I find it fascinating too that you said you really wanted to impress this first mentor. And I know that your dad was a hoarder. Like, when we say hoarding, are we mean like those TLC shows where there's like rooms filled with baby dolls and bags? Was it that kind of hoarding?
I mean, it was in a sense that kind of hoarding, but with not baby dolls and things. My father was an electrician.
Yeah.
And he had a collector, right? He would collect old radios from like the 40s.
This is such a trip.
Old radios from like the 40s, and he would find them at flea markets, like beat up old radios, and he would get as many of them as he could, and he would buy them for nothing, and he would rebuild them. And he had like shit all over the house, stacks and stacks of mechanical magazines, and you know, by the end, you know, of his life, and I hadn't lived in that house for a long time at that point, but you know, there was like little pathways to walk through our little 600 square foot apartment because there were stacks of shit like this high, you know, like 4 feet high, and you couldn't really see much because it was just. And then there was a little corner of our apartment that he had his computer in, and you wouldn't see him because he was in this little pocket that. You know, it was rough.
It's crazy. My dad, so this is going back to the first time I ever talked to you, there were similarities around this father wound and actually how we can use the wound as a fuel source of love. My dad collected radios. So it's kind of trippy that you're sitting here sharing that. He literally has, I don't know how many radios, like hundreds of them, and they're stacked around his place. Now, I don't have a relationship with my father, and we've done a lot of content. I've had a lot of conversations about the wound of the father. But I think it's really fascinating because when I look back into your journey, it seems like there was this likability that you had naturally. Like, you're a pretty likable guy, right? Kind of Greek god mixed with like tattooed, like, I don't know, skateboarder, like workout fitness person. There's a lot going for you. and so when you would go to people outside of your home, there was this likability where you were really shining for people, and you wanted specifically older men, parental figures, because yours didn't satisfy that piece of you that was needing to be nourished. I find it fascinating that the wound of the father created this likability that's actually been a massive fuel source for you to connect with your first mentor, first and foremost, but then also in business. Because business is like dating, right? Minus the intimacy. If you mix intimacy with business, it usually doesn't work out very well. But I find that fascinating. Have you sat and reflected upon the vacuum or the wound that was created by your father's illness and how that's driven you to not just go into the healing world of addiction, but also to be successful in business? There's some serious threads connected to that.
So I'm going to get a little esoteric here. Because why not?
It's a good place for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandmother was the most influential person in my life. My grandmother was a healer. She was a crystal healer. She had a crystal store in Queens, my father's mother. Her name was Chick, little Italian woman. And she was the most influential person in my life and very, very spiritual, like beyond, you know. She from the day I was born, told my mother and father, and then as soon as I could comprehend English, that I was an old soul. I didn't understand what that meant. This is my grandma. She's tattooed on my arm. I had no idea what that meant. Even into my, adult life, I just didn't understand what old soul meant. But on my journey, I've sort of done some diligence on kind of what that could mean. And I believe I chose my parents. I believe I'm here to tell stories. And I know that this is not my first time. So, I think my father was put in my path because it was a challenge I needed to get through. And I've been blessed to have experienced that. I genuinely have gratitude for it. I wouldn't change anything. There's one regret I have in my life, quite frankly, and it's the first 2 years of my first son's life that I was really, really busy in business to not spend as much time as I would have liked to. That's the only regret. But the abuse from my father in the home as a kid, the sexual abuse from a sports coach that I experienced, the drug and alcohol addictions and all the bad things that I did, I'm grateful for him, man. I'm grateful for him. And so I really do think that we choose. My ability to connect with human beings is my superpower. I'm not a great businessman. I'm not I have an ability you put me at the White House or you put me in Watts, I am going to make friends fast, and I think that is, they talk about like emotional intelligence is like something of the last decade, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we've been hearing, right? Some people have it, and it's given me and I have it. And I'm not I'm confident in that, right? Like you put me in front of a spreadsheet and tell me to build a model for the next 12 months, I'm going to look at you sideways and that's not me. I'm just not good at that. I find incredible people to work with who are great at that, but it's just not my shtick. And I used to have a lot of guilt around that. Oh man, I need to be better at this and better at that. And the truth of the matter is, anybody that's listening here that's potentially an entrepreneur like me or an aspiring entrepreneur, you kind of walk into the world of entrepreneurship thinking that you need to fucking be great at everything. And you need to understand all aspects of the business. But that's like saying Tom Brady, the unbelievable, naturally talented quarterback, we want you to be a doctor tomorrow. What do you got? And Brady's going to be like,
not much.
I'm a quarterback, man. What are you talking about? Like, I'm one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to live. Like, you want me to be a doctor? Like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to do that. And so we're kind of, as entrepreneurs, thrown into that mix. I mean, that's an extreme example, but like, if you come up as an incredible chef, and you want to open up a restaurant, you have to understand how to build a business and how to conduct hospitality in a certain way. And you need to understand operations, and you need to understand marketing, and you need to understand all these things. And so it's just like, the emotional intelligence piece of my life has really put me in positions to excel, and I don't know where that's from. I can't tell you where it's from.
If you like that clip, click the one that's on the screen now, and I promise you'll enjoy it just the same, if not more.